loosely turn up, we will add them to the mix. So this semester's one book is The Martian by Andy Weir, as everyone knows. And we do this event every year to kind of get people ready and start thinking about how they might want to use the book. So we try to get people from as many disciplines as possible. Sometimes it's more difficult than others. But regardless of who is able to be here today, we do have online resources. And I'll show you this in a second, but if anyone wants to know how to get to the One Book blog, here's the easiest way. Type in One Book blog in the search bar and get you here. I honestly, I don't know any other way to get there. But here we have curriculum resources from a bunch of different disciplines, and I can show you if you go to curriculum and resources. We have items from science and engineering that actually Anthony Ucci put together. Business, I believe Jen Deckers-Mitchell worked on those. Social sciences, reading instruction, Lynn, you did those, correct?
I did.
And writing and literature, Margaret Cox, also on our panel, put together. And health sciences, I believe that Kim Griffith worked on those. And Susan McCourt worked on the mathematics items. So these are here. I don't know if you two want to access them at any point. They're just here.
Okay. I also made handouts of what's on there if anybody wanted a quick and easy thing to look at.
So Lynn, why don't you start?
Okay. I think you all know who I am by now. So, Lynn Gowdy, I am the Quest Learning Specialist for Reading. I'm also an adjunct instructor in Reading 080 I have taught, and CSS. This semester, when I was sort of approached to write curriculum for The Martian, I started thinking lesson plans. So I wrote out 2 lesson plans and submitted them over the few weeks that we were given to do that. But over the summer, I developed that into more, and I use this word, I'm not going to call it, but I'm going to call it anyway, kind of a thematic curriculum. And I hate to say that because that kind of pigeonholes everyone, but I thought if you were going to present The Martian in a way, you might as well go full tilt and present a lot of scope. That is, introduce them to NASA. I have a class that is full of 18-year-olds. They don't know what NASA is. They don't even remember the space shuttle, most of them. They've never heard about people walking on the moon, and the only thing they've really, after polling them on the first day, is that they think it's all a bunch of controversy and hope. They don't think it really happened. They think it's computer graphics. They live in a world of computer-generated images. So it's hard for them to decipher what's real and what isn't real. So knowing that, I started my curriculum off for reading, not only introducing them to the textbook, of course, and active reading, but I also showed them the documentary In the Shadow of the Moon, which is available on YouTube and on Netflix and through DVD if you wish to purchase one. And we only have watched certain segments of it. I have, it's a 2-hour thing. I'm not going to spend that much time showing them video. But the reason why I started with that was to kind of pique their interest and to give them some background knowledge into what we're going to encounter in The Martian. Even though The Martian is fictional, we are actually, as a nation, actively seeking to go to Mars. And so I've brought in other things, such as the high seas site where astronauts are on Hawaiian volcano in a habitat that would be very much like the Mars surface and very much what a hat would look like. They wear spacesuits outside. They do not have contact other than through their radios and technology, just like the Martian would have. And this is the 3rd crew that's doing it. And so I have pulled up an article on that, as well as the blog from the woman who's documenting everything, who turns out to be an alum of the University of Rhode Island. She acts as the medical doctor on the team, and she's also the documentarian. So we're also going to be looking at that material, not just the Martian. So they're going to get hopefully a fuller picture and an appreciation for what's going on with the project. Okay, that's kind of how I approached it. Now we're into the semester, what, about a week? So far we have learned about SQ3R strategy and reading a textbook, and we've done some group readings together, and we looked at the documentary, and the very first assignment, real assignment that I'm giving them is actually called Crazy or Courageous, and they have to write a reflection on the video that they're watching, the documentary. I want them to see, are these men courageous or just plain crazy for doing what they're doing? So that will get them prepped, hopefully, and primed for the character of Mark Twain and why he would go there in the first place, why anybody would go to Mars on a mission, and how he would survive being there for 4 years. So hopefully all this is going to add to their schemata and get that activated. The very first lesson plan that I created, if you wanted to bring it up, we'll talk about it, is a very simplistic developmental reading lesson plan. Now, it may not work for everyone, but you could certainly use some of the things, I think, tweak it into something you could use. And it's called Get the Gist. And all of you former reading instructors out there should know what that is. Generating interactions between schemata and text. So that's what I've been trying to push on them with this documentary, and trying to get them to reflect on how they feel about the material. And along with that, this is what the actual worksheet would be. I have the entire lesson plan. So this is what the actual worksheet would be for the students. They have to start by reading, and I pulled out a log, one log from chapter 2 of The Martian, which I thought was most interesting. It kind of shows who he is, and how he thinks, and what he's doing, and how he's going to deal with his problem. And it's just a simple page and a half to read. So I thought it was a good thing for them to start with. So from that, then, they're going to read the log. And as they read, they're going to circle the vocabulary terms that they do not know or understand. It's very simplistic. I think every student should do that. And then list the 5 most troublesome words or definitions they have, if they still are not clear on it. Then they're going to start to ask themselves who, what, when, where, why, and how. We all know those are the basic questions when you want to decipher and analyze any text. So this is a way for developmental students to kind of see it and start to pull it apart and look at it and start to ask, who is it? Who is this guy? What does he want? How is he feeling? You know, what is happening? He's stranded on Mars, but more than that, what is happening? What is happening to his head? What is happening to his body? What is happening to his mind? So once they pull all that apart, hopefully they'll get a better sense of the book. And then it goes into the gist summary, which I think is one of the better parts of the assignment, is to write a short summary on what they just read. Get them ready for the writing portion, because we want to introduce good writing. We want them to start thinking that way, concisely. So then they write their little summary of that page and a half. And then I give them a thought question. And I want them to write just a reflective 1 or 2 paragraphs on it. And this is what it says. Watney spends most of his time problem solving about survival. However, on Thanksgiving, he reflects back to home and his parents. He says, my guess is it won't be much fun with what me having died 10 days ago. I've been so busy staying alive, I've never thought of what this must be like for my parents. So I've asked them to write a reflective 1 or 2 paragraphs to the prompt, if you were completely alone for a long length of time, that's right, without a way to communicate with others, with whom would you miss the most and why? So very simplistic developmental writing question to get them into that. I want them to get into his psyche. If you can, my theory is if you can buy into the character, you will like the story. If you don't buy the character from the outset, you're not going to be interested in the story. At least that's how it is for my reading. When I read fictional works, that is, I have to buy into the character. So that's the very first real assignment, other than this little thing that I'm going to ask them to write about for a evening. And then my other assignments, I'm kind of developing this as I go. However, it's a work in progress. I think it's going to work. Vocabulary terms are going to be pulled from The Martian and The Fly and other readings that I give them, as well as vocabulary on prefixes and suffixes that are in the back chapters of our reading text. And we start to begin to read The Martian next week. So I wanted to get through the documentary first. And we'll probably start off, and most likely I will read aloud the first chapter to them. I want them to get a sense of the book. I like them. I want them to hear it. And students tend to like it. It's kind of calming or something. I can emphasize things I want them to know that way. I can emphasize words that I need to ask them about, if they know. And then I'll ask them to read chapters 2, the subsequent ones on their own. But the first one, just to kind of dive into it. And then we go into a magazine article. It's called High Seas. This is my lesson plan 2, I call it. That's what I called it on that. But actually, lesson plan 2 is a 3, you can pull it up if you want.
Yeah, I'll do that.
It's a 3-prong thing in that it takes the whole semester to get through. It's not just something they do in one day, like that would be one assignment. And on this one, it's called How to Become an Astronaut. And it takes into how to research being an astronaut, because it's not as straightforward as anyone would think. If you want to be an astronaut, you just don't go to City and put in astronaut. You're not going to get a career called astronaut. An astronaut is one of those people that have several different degrees in several different areas. So the first section is to read over the entire assignment first, because I want them to see overall what's happening. And then to ask questions if they don't understand it. And then to research how to become an astronaut, either online or through text and journals. So we can use this in a CSS class as well. You can summarize the findings and be sure to use citations taken directly. I'll show them how to do that in groups. And then they're supposed to turn in their summaries. And then section 2 is to read all 3 copies of the articles. That would be the book, The High Seas. This is an actual article from Quadrangles, the URI alumni magazine. And this talks all about the High Seas project. High Seas stands for Hawaiian something Hawaiian Space Exploration Analog and Simulation 4. I thought it was 3. 4. He was on, Mark Watney was on his mission 3. They're on mission 4 on the Hawaiian volcano. So they'll need to read this through. And then I have a blog, which I think is probably the most interesting that they're going to have. I don't have copies of it, but it's called My Life on Simulated Mars, and it's written by Sheena Gifford, the astronaut this was about. You can follow her. You can just go live. It's Live from Mars is the name of the blog. And I just pulled this out April the 5th, 2016, because that's the day I happened to put it out because I thought it was interesting. And she's also the official photographer, so it's all in beautiful colored pictures, her blog, and it's all what they do. So it's kind of interesting because you get a personal and a scientific perspective. And it's also reading a blog. It's something that students do all the time. I like to read blogs. I like to write the I haven't gotten into any texting or Twitter or that kind of stuff. Maybe next semester, next year. I'm not really into that technology yet. But for now, I think blogging and magazine article and the actual novel plus the documentary should give us a really wide aspect of what's going on in that perspective. And that's basically what it is. And then from there's the different questions. What degrees does he have? Did Mark have? His skills? What degrees does Sheena Gifford have? You know, what skills does she have? What other degrees might be necessary? And most importantly, what is the personality type? Because that's what they're looking for astronauts. It's really their personality. And when you read anything by anyone in the space program, the #1 astronaut that everyone always talks about is Neil Armstrong. And it's not necessarily because he was the first man to walk on the moon, but because of his personality. He just had that coolness where he could not freak out even a second before death. He just had, he remained cool and logical and didn't freak out. So that's what kind of personality they're looking for, really. They're looking for nerves of steel. That's hard to come by. And then, of course, the third part has more to do with CSS. You wouldn't have to use this part. But they're going to go to the BCC career website, explore the website, look at the application, outlook, handbook, try to find out how to become an astronaut and whether or not they want to. Or what kind of jobs are related to that. There are literally hundreds of thousands of jobs attached to the NASA agency. Hundreds of thousands, from secretaries on up to computer programmers. So it's a pretty wide, extensive look, I think, in that. And reading, hopefully, I just want them to open their minds a little bit. That's what my goal is, to have them open their minds and understand that reading is not going to hurt them. Yes, it can be boring, but you do it in small pieces and you read a couple of different ones. And that's basically what I'm doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was thinking about what you said about personality type. They talk about watching the book as that being a big reason why he was even on the mission in the first place. Right? He was that guy with nerves of steel and who could keep things light and get along with different people. And it's interesting. I think we'll do questions after.
Sure.
Is that okay with folks? Or okay.
Okay, The Martian. It's interesting that this text was selected because I'm not a sci-fi person. I don't like sci-fi. But like Lynn was pointing out, it's important to have a character in a text that you can root for. And we've certainly found that in Mark Watney. But what I like to do in my writing assignments for my classes is to make connections with one text and another text. So I'm making a connection with The Martian and the work of Henry David Thoreau. So the learning objectives for English 101 this semester in teaching The Martian is to understand the major principles of transcendentalism, which Thoreau very much stood for, including the relationship between humans and nature, as well as the notion of self-reliance, and also to examine and interpret literature and film. Yes, we saw the film. As a matter of fact, we just started watching the film The Martian, because these are freshmen, and honestly speaking, I don't think they're going to get through that thick novel at the very beginning of the semester, maybe scattered throughout. But we started watching the film, and we're very enthused by it. Last week we started reading Where I Lived and What I Lived For, Chapter 2 of Henry David Thoreau's Walden Pond. And that they made an immediate connection to, and what I'm having them do, it's 2 assignments. They have an option of comparing and contrasting Mark Watney's experience on Mars while he's stranded with Henry David Thoreau's imposed isolation for 2 years on Walden Pond. So that's one option. And the other option is not so much to isolate themselves, but to take away one technology or one non-essential item, like for instance, their cell phone or their internet usage, Facebook, the new one, Pokemon Go. Yes, I even caught a few on my way to class. But nevertheless, it's something that students are doing a lot, that people are doing a lot, and it's a non-essential. So for 3 to 5 days, they're going to keep a log, much in the same way that Mark Watkins took a log, and just record their experience, what it was like being without that technology or that comfortable, non-essential item, and then reflecting upon how, this experience has changed their outlook. So that's what we're starting with. Now, while I'm not using this text throughout the semester, but just within the first weeks of it, I think it would be memorable. But toward the end of the semester, I'm going to assign them as a final essay, a reflective essay. And they can reflect back on this experience as well as their experiences throughout the semester and just make that connection throughout. Now, as far as individual activities, we've been working on that for the past few weeks. I showed them a snippet from The Martian itself. It was a portion of the chapter where he's stranded, where he's trying to grow potatoes in a different environment, not so much a hostile environment, but it's unfamiliar. And even though he has skills as a botanist, he's not being a botanist on Earth. It's completely different being a botanist on Mars. He has to create soil in a non-conventional way, using his own waste, unfortunately. And I don't want to get gross already. So moving your breath book, you know what happened. And all of these challenges. But also, as my students and I were just talking as we finished watching the first 20 minutes or so of the film, that connection, that longing to have that human connection while living in isolation, and that hopefulness, and at the same time hopelessness that he's not going to be found. But nevertheless, he's going to, he's keeping this log to indicate that here he was on Mars. And, I also asked the students to reflect over the weekend as they're watching the rest of the film. Why Mars? Why explore Mars? Why go to the moon? Why go to Mars? Why not work on the issues that we have here on Earth? What is it that we're trying to gain in our exploration? And do we take a biocentric position in our exploration where we're living in a balance with nature? Or do we take an anthropocentric position where we are the dominator? So I want them to get really philosophical with this experience. So that's it for now.
Thank you so much. Thoughts? If anyone wants to ask questions of our panelists or share what they're thinking about doing, that would be great.
I have a question about the reading piece. It's a good book and everything, but I had a tough time getting through the technical parts of it. There's a lot of math and gets into details about moving water and that kind of dense reading is throughout the book because there's a lot of technical issues he has to deal with. So what do you, or anybody here, what are you guys doing to help students get through that?
Lots of Googling.
I'm actually not requiring them to read every single part of the book. So there are, like the oxygenator, we're going to talk about the oxygenator, but I'm not going to have them, read that whole section on what he does with the oxygenator. I mean, I don't think that's necessary. We can circumvent that. The book lays itself really well to doing that, cutting out certain parts, because it's all done in logs. Because it is in logs, you can just pick and choose your logs that you want to present to them or have them read. And as I told the students, I'm not going to expect them to read every single word in the book. That's not the point, really. We're going to learn about how to dissect it and analyze it. But do I expect them to spend hours and hours and hours reading over scientific stuff that they may not be interested in? But that's something we'll encounter in class together, those parts.
And to further answer your question, the film, with its use of visuals, we see the explanations. We see him going through the step-by-step process of oxygenating or whatever scientific task he's engaged in. So they're going to see what's going on visually speaking.
I'm using the whole book. I'm spreading out the reading throughout the whole semester. And I've already told them some parts of it for some students are going to be fascinating because they're technical, and for some students they won't be. And there's one girl in the class who's already told us she's read the book twice. She has it on her Kindle. She loves it so much, and I think she's read every word. And realistically, I don't think the ones who find the techie stuff, the math, engaging, they're going to skip over bits. And I told them I'm not technical either, but I'm fascinated by some of it, and it's not a big deal if you skip over a few bits. You're still getting the story. But there are some real gems, though, in the technical pieces of the log, where there's one place where he talks about failure.
Right.
And that's in the middle of all this other stuff. And it's such a wonderful line. You know, I started it and underlined it in my book, and I know we're going to talk about it at some point. But I'm not really that worried because they're all different. Some students are going to feel really comfortable, others are going to skip, and you can't stand over them. I'm just hoping they'll enjoy it.
Other questions, comments?
I have a question about the URI thing, because I was so thrilled. I get the alumni magazine too.
You saw it? Did
Yeah,
you see the article?
Yeah, I saved
When I saw
it.
this, I was like,
I thought they were just finishing up
they might
with
be.
it.
Yes,
Yeah.
they might be.
Yeah, but they would, I haven't checked the blog lately. I would imagine it's still up. I'll have to check to see.
I haven't checked the progress of this either, because this was all in the spring that I was
Yeah.
working with this and thinking about it.
The concept is so great. It's-
We might be able to get an event together related to that in the spring. I know the person who is actually working on contacting those folks is no longer at the college, so we have to, the committee's sort of rejiggering. But, you know, we have discussed that group, and because they're so close, we're hoping maybe we could get someone to speak on at least what that project's all about. So now,
Contact Sheena
yeah, now the,
along.
yeah, that would be great. The one book events are now extending into spring, so we have room for other things to happen in the spring. And we do have an astronaut who's going to be coming to speak in November 21st. I'm not sure we have a time for it yet, but we have a date.
Oh, I thought there
Was there a time?
9:30 on Monday.
We do, and I don't remember it, okay. But it's November 20, I do know it's November 21st.
Yeah.
So there'll be more announcements. Susan will be sending out more announcements of upcoming events. And if you all have ideas, please share them with the committee. Because like I said, we can, you know, sometimes people need lag time, but now we can set stuff up for the fall, up for the spring as well.
And with that event, he's coming in for a talk. Will it be streamed to the other campuses?
We are going to attempt to do that, yes. Yeah, we just were talking about that the other day, trying to figure out what the best technology is. Because now with Facebook Live, we have potentially more options than we used to have with just Skype, which was tricky. But we're trying to work that out. Yeah. Tom?
I have to say, like, I love coming to these because I get very inspired by not only are you using the one book, but you put so much effort and creativity into customizing curriculum that's very, very focused on what the book has to offer, and you let it bloom into your own field. And so much about attaching it to complementary texts. Like, that's what I'm struck by both of your work, is that you're not just focused, I just focused on the book, but, you know, I feel humbled and challenged to think about it in the context of texts that communicate laterally and vertically around the one book. It's not just that you're teaching to the learning outcomes of the course specifically with just the book. And it's a real inspiration. I just appreciate your work.
I think that's a great point, Tom. And I think that that might help people to reconsider maybe using the book when they start to feel like maybe I don't have to use the whole book. But how can I still make it substantial and not just be, sometimes, I use excerpts and I use them, in 101 and 102, but kind of to fit into the curriculum that's already there, not necessarily bringing in these other great ideas. And so students will be familiar with it, so when the events come up, they'll be more interested and more engaged, and so they do have some familiarity with the text. But I think that when you start thinking about, like you said, customizing and kind of contextualizing in a different way, that it makes it sort of maybe feel more legitimate that you're not using the whole text, that you're using portions of the text for a very substantial reason.
One little thing that I want to attempt to do, this is always like jumping off a cliff, because you're using a book you've never used, and you hope you land somewhere soft. And at the very first class, I have them write a short reflection about themselves as writers, and then I give that back to them when we get near the end, where they have a chance to think about what's happened over 15 weeks and see if they feel, anything different or the same or whatever. And I asked them this time to add a little piece. I said, just write down the first thing that comes to your mind about what you think creativity is, because to me, that's one of the key pieces at the heart of the book. And most of the time when people think about creativity, they think about the arts. Mm-hmm. And I've asked a number of people about that, and they tend to, yes, writing is something art, it's something about making art. And I want to see, as we go along, and we're going to talk about that, what they think, and I'm going to remind them too what they wrote, because some of them had very specific, again, artsy kinds of definitions. Others were broader, and then some were so broad they really didn't seem to mean anything anymore. It's like when I feel good. So they had, they might need to think a little bit more about words. But engineers typically aren't our first thought. And I think some students in the class talk about loving to write creatively, and others, the thought of it makes them nervous, and I want them to think about ways in which they are creative regardless of what their particular talents are or programs. So that's an ongoing thing.
I think if you think about creative problem solving and add that phrase to the end of it, then it opens people's minds up a little bit about what it can mean to be creative. Right?
Every time he wakes up, he's got a new problem, and half the time he screws up too, which is great.
Right.
Exactly. It's day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And overcoming that every day takes, fortitude. It's a lot of people just give up. And he has it every day. Everybody has to problem solve every day. Maybe not to the extent Mark Watney did.
Let's hope not.
But, there are problems out there every day in our life. And I want the students to see that.
That's a great topic, because our
Just
students,
have to problem solve.
yeah, and they have to do creative problem solving a lot. And I'm sure if we asked them to think about that, they'd come up with some interesting stories about when they had to be creative to survive something or overcome something. Other comments?
Yeah, sorry, I was a little bit late because I was tutoring. But one of the things that I was going to look at for The Martian is actually there's a few blogs on NASA that are really interesting to look at, and one of them was when they were in the International Space Station. I think it was astronaut Scott Kelly was growing flowers in space, and people from the ground were giving him all these directions that weren't working. So he was like, you know what, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. I'm just going to go by instinct. And he said, I'm thinking of myself as the Martian. So it's an interesting blog to take a look at. It's kind of a nice thing that I think is going to be really interesting, because it's a science fiction book, but here's all these real life things that are happening now that I don't think a lot of, some of our students aren't aware of. I certainly wasn't aware of, oh, by the way, there are flowers in space right now. I didn't know that. So yeah, I'm going to be taking a look at some of the blogs there.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say something to Tom. I think it's easier to develop curriculum when you're really into it. I love science fiction, and I bought right into Watney's character right at the onset of the book. So I too have read it 3 times through and watched the movie and read all these things that I could, went to the NASA website. So it's easier to be inspired when you're interested in it. And I know Mike has done a lot of work, Mike Geary, in thematic things that he's gotten inspired about. So, Tom, give it a whack.
Margaret, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, as far as being inspired by it, I didn't think I could be inspired by that, but definitely through making the connections to other texts. Life is an experience, and whether you're in space, you're on Walden Pond, wherever you are, there is that common thread of humanity that we have, that you can make connections to other texts. And the students can make connections to their own real-life experiences. And we gotta really push that. Whatever the one book may be, whether it's Mark Watney's experience in The Martian, or I forgot the guy's name, the guy from A Walk in the Woods.
Bryson.
Bill Bryson, yeah.
Bryson.
Yeah, it was just last year. But yeah, it's all connected. It's all connected.
I love your assignment, Margaret, of having them not use one of their favorite devices for a couple of days. And keeping a log, that's
And it's hard to do. And I told them, if you find yourself missing it, and you cheat a little bit, just jump right back into it, and to help them feel better, I'm going along with it. I'm giving up Facebook, and I've cheated twice already. But I'm ready to jump right back in.
How long are you keeping it up for?
7 days. I'll go a week without it.
I think it's one of the way you could approach it too is, what do they feel like when the electricity goes off? And the batteries go dead on their cell phone. Like, how do they feel? I know when the electricity goes off, I always get weirded out because I feel like I'm disconnected from the world. And also when my vehicle is down for repairs and I don't have that car, I feel very isolated at home. So I know that they can think about that. So I'm going to put that in my curriculum.
I think the difference.
See, it's ongoing curriculum.
The difference between knowing when it's coming back and not knowing too, right? When you lose your energy at home, it's always like, well, if I knew it was only going to be off for an hour, I would really enjoy it, right? Light some candles, it'd be great, it's like an adventure. But if it's going to be like a week, now I'm worried what's going to happen. And I think he's in that situation at certain parts of the novel, right? There are times when he doesn't know. There are other times when he has something to latch on to, feeling like, help's coming. And the difference in your spirit in that situation, is really relatable.
So it's really good for them to, I think, can it make connections like that? It's really good to have them go without their cell phone or something, Facebook or a computer game or something.
What will they do in the holidays?
The Pokemon to find.
I want to thank everyone for coming, and please take some food and take some coffee on your way out. We've got plenty of munchkins and sweets, so please go ahead and take whatever you would like. Just walk right out with the box. It's on one book, so thanks everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.